as finishing the draft BAP for board and council review. So hopefully, like in the next few weeks before the holidays, to finish and start implementing a communications plan, because we really want to reach like as many Hamiltonians as we can across the urban, suburban, and rural areas over the winter to see what they think about biodiversity and what should be protected. Public and stakeholder consultation after the boards and council have reviewed the draft BAP. So we're looking at late winter into spring, making edits based on the consultation, and then sending the BAP back to boards and councils for final review, hopefully in late summer, early fall. So that's where we're at. Thanks for letting me give the update about where we're at and what we've been working on. I'm not sure if there would be any questions, but that's kind of where we're at right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen, for your informative delegation. I see Councillor Wilson on the speakers. Oh, sorry, Councillor Farr, you're first, followed by Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Jen, excellent presentation. It's really exciting, I'm sure, for all of us to see the progress that's being made, and obviously the very, very good work that's happening. And you know, your mission to protect, explore, connect, restore includes, of those 4 criteria, 2 that we'll be working quite obviously as a council for future closely on, and because they reflect policy, and I'm glad we're really headed in that direction, which gets me to my question through you, Mr. Chair. Your coordinator, I believe you said you hired, I have heard has really fine pedigree for such a prominent in a position that is going to grow in prominence for future, really spotlight. I'm sure lots of media, a lot of these engagement sessions that you're carrying out very soon. And so a very identifiable individual, I'm sure you shared that in the interview process for future, because this is a massively important file, quite obviously. So who is it, and what's the pedigree there through you, Chair? That's my only question.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Councillor Farr. And so her name is Emily Gothrow, and she actually has a very, very unique background. So, you know, back in the day, she had like the university geography degree, and has morphed into more communications, HR, corporate training. Which has been very good with herding us cats on the biodiversity working group, because we have all the ecology, nature, environment expertise. And so she brings that expertise of facilitating all of us and moving us forward in a direction and providing that light to keep us going and not going down rabbit holes. She doesn't allow rabbit holes, which is really important for this.
Okay. Hey, you know, Jason Thorne had a geography degree too, and now he's the head of the OC. So yeah, right. Life offers spins. Awesome. Really looking forward to working with Emily, and keep up the great work. Again, we appreciate the update. I know you said the draft's coming soon. You got your comms plan coming soon, and of course the public engagement, which we'll watch very closely, and we appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Good morning, Jen.
Morning.
Very, very happy to see you and to receive this update. It's most welcome. I did have 2 questions, if I could, through the chair. You referenced the work of other municipalities that your coordinator has been doing as part of their scan. How old are those activities or those plans recent? And why do you think that municipalities are moving in the direction? Why do they see the need? Is this a recent phenomenon to put a stake in the ground in terms of biodiversity?
That's a good question, Councillor Wilson. Toronto's is very new. Like they're kind of just getting going on the implementation now. Theirs came forward actually because a resident helped to push it forward. They were already doing a lot of their ravine strategies and those kinds of strategies. And so they were kind of, and they already had their pollinator plan. So they were already kind of going in that direction. So, you know, it was a natural next step for them. For the other municipalities, I'm not sure. I'd have to get back to you on the specifics. I know that some of them, like Calgary, they focused on the public lands. And so it wasn't as broad as what we want ours to be for Hamilton. Edmonton was a plan that we really liked because of how accessible, so informative, but also very accessible by anybody. And why they started it, I'm not sure. I think a lot of it at a municipal level is driven by staff, just, wanting to see how things are going, and, see the direction that we're heading in and what we need to do to protect things. But I can get back to you with more specifics from what our coordinator uncovered.
Yep, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Through the chair, here's my thesis, Jen, that urban centers are seeing an alignment between biodiversity and the goals of resiliency, whether it mean impact on their strategic investments, hard infrastructure or soft infrastructure, and their claims to be interested in climate change. And in the absence of a biodiversity plan, they're not able to achieve any of those other stated goals. How's that for a thesis? What do you think?
I think that's probably pretty bang on for all of them, and including ours.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen. Really, really excited about what's forthcoming, and thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions for our delegate? Not seeing any. Well, thank you, Jen. And I need a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation. Moved by Councillor Farr and seconded by Councillor Wilson. Favor or opposed? Thank you. That's unanimous. On to consent items. So members of staff who are speaking at today's meeting are asked to state their name and title before speaking for the first time. We have item 7.1, the Biodiversity Action Plan, 6-month update. I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor, and then we'll open it for discussion. So moved by Councillor Farr, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Is there any discussion on item 7.1? Not seeing any. Okay. There are recommendations in the report. So in favor or opposed? Thank you. That's unanimous. 7.2 is our active official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and plan of subdivision applications citywide. Mover and a seconder to put this on the floor to receive. Moved by Councillor Ferguson and seconded by Councillor Partridge. Thank you. Any discussion? Not seeing any. Thank you. That's unanimous. 7.3, to incorporate city lands into Osprey Drive, bylaw PED 21192 in Ward 12. Mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations in the report. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Is there any discussion on 7.3? Not seeing any. So all in favor or opposed? Thank you. That's unanimous. 7.4 are adjustments to the school crossing guard locations in wards 5, 7, and 9. Mover and seconder to approve the recommendations in the report. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Farr, because I saw you stifle a yawn. All in favor or opposed? It's like a live auction there, Councillor. You can't scratch or do anything. That's unanimous. Thank you. On to our public hearings and delegations. The public has been advised of how to pre-register to be a virtual delegate at the public meetings on today's agenda. Members of the public, in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, please be advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the City of Hamilton before Council makes a decision regarding the zoning bylaw amendment application before us today, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the City of Hamilton to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So item 9.1 is the Pleasant View Area Land Use Study and Associated Rural Hamilton Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw 05200 amendments in Ward 13. Councillor Partridge?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And in conversation, oh, there she is. I had just texted Councillor Vanderbeek that we were dealing with her item next. So I'll turn the floor over to her with your permission, sir.
Thank you, Councillor. We do have a staff presentation on this, but I'll go to Councillor Vanderbeek if she'd like to see the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. This report is crucially important to my ward. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the city planning staff, in particular Spencer Skidmore, who has been involved most recently. They have worked tirelessly to assist myself, the Pleasant View community, and others who have, over the past 50 years, advocated and persevered to assure in perpetuity the preservation of the Pleasant View area. Approval of this report before you will confirm the city's regulations are in conformity with the provincial Niagara Escarpment Plan as required by the Niagara Escarpment Act. And in addition, it will assure that in the unlikely possibility that the plan could someday be lifted, the city's regulations and protections will prevail. And I am wholeheartedly in support of what is before you today. So is my community, and I'm hopeful that this will be approved and things will move forward. Thank you so much for the time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Partridge?
Yes, and I want to thank Councillor Vanderbeek for the incredible hard work that the team, herself, and the residents of Pleasant View have done. You know, this went from being a wonderful issue to a nightmare issue a couple of years ago, and now we're back to now we're back to a very successful recommendation. I'm quite prepared to move the report if I can get a seconder, and I'll do that on behalf of Councillor Pearson, and I'll do that on behalf of Councillor Vanderbeek. And I thank her so much for all her ups and downs on this particular Pleasant View file. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor. So we do need to go through the vote procedure here. So first of all is the staff presentation. So if we want to waive the staff presentation, Councillor Ferguson?
Move we waive it.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to waive the staff presentation, moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Thank you, that's unanimous. We have John Ahrens with IBI Group, who is the agent for Columbia International College regarding 574 Northcliffe Avenue, which is a property affected by the proposed amendments. Mr. Ahrens?
Good morning, members of committee. I trust you can hear me okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've been before you. It's good to see you, albeit in a very small virtual meeting session. I do have a very brief PowerPoint presentation I'd like to share with the committee, if I could, please.
Certainly.
Thank you. Are you able to see this?
Not yet. We're just seeing your video feed right now.
Okay. I don't know what I'm doing wrong then. It's been a while since I've done this, but.
John, it's Lisa here. Are you
two things. Are you using two screens, two monitors?
No, I'm
Maybe-
not. I'm trying to use the share button, Lisa, and
Yep.
then click on my PowerPoint.
So, okay, so when you click, when you've selected what image you're sharing, then you just need to hit share down at the bottom right.
Are you seeing that now?
Not
Nope,
as of
no
yet.
change.
Okay, my apologies. Why don't I just simply wing it? Sometimes technology fails me. I'm here on behalf of Columbia International College, and we certainly echo Councillor Vanderbeek's comments and Councillor Partridge's comments about the Pleasant View area. It truly is unique. It is this wonderful natural environment, but it does have this large institutional focus, being the former convent of the Sisters of St. Joseph's, which also contains the Precious Blood Convent. Both of these sites have been there for many, many years, and unfortunately, the sisters have decided to relocate. But fortunately for the city of Hamilton, Columbia International College has purchased these properties, and it is their goal to convert the St. Joseph's Mother House into their grade 12 campus for part of their international school. And as you're all aware, Hamilton has been rebranding itself as an education center, and Columbia certainly is a key component of that rebranding. The Sisters of the Precious Blood will remain on site while Columbia occupies the St. Joe's Mother House. To do that, we have filed a Niagara Escarpment Plan Amendment application. And just from a planning status point of view, these lands are part of the Niagara Escarpment Plan, and most recently, they've been brought into development control. What that means, and I basically tell my clients, you can't really do anything without securing Niagara Escarpment permits and approvals. And the city of Hamilton, of course, and the conservation authorities and the other agencies are key players in that escarpment plan process. What I'm suggesting to you today is that all the cards are now at the appropriate location, which is with the Niagara Escarpment Commission. They are the Trump agency, and I'm not referring to our friend down south. I'm referring to the game of euchre, where the Trump card really controls everything. So from that standpoint, the control is where it needs to be. The Niagara Escarpment Plan has very definitive uses. What your staff are proposing with the Pleasant View amendment is to basically copy the same restrictions from the Niagara Escarpment Plan and put them in to your rural Hamilton official plan. I'm going to suggest to you that that is perhaps overkill and a redundancy in planning processes. When you consider that the Niagara Escarpment Plan controls the land uses, development control replaces your zoning, there's no need to duplicate the efforts at the municipal level. What that means is that there would be duplication of applications. There's nothing to be gained by requiring local applications in concert with Niagara Escarpment Plan applications. It just represents, in our opinion, a redundancy in process. It also adds confusion to members of the public. What agency are we dealing with today on this matter? Having it all under the jurisdiction of the Niagara Escarpment Plan eliminates that types of confusion. And as I mentioned, Hamilton would still be a commenting agency. All we are requesting today is that you simply modify the site-specific permissions applicable to our client's property and simply say permitted uses shall be those educational and institutional uses permitted by the Niagara Escarpment Plan. By doing that, you've created a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of flexibility that would allow the continuation of the religious uses and a continuation of the educational uses which are currently permitted today, but without limiting them and placing the control appropriately with the Niagara Escarpment Commission. So we have no concerns with bringing these lands into conformity with the Niagara Escarpment Plan. We're just requesting a little bit of flexibility when you do so that you're not just mirroring the restrictions. Columbia has filed a Niagara Escarpment Plan amendment that is going through the process. We're hoping that'll be approved earlier, Q1 of next year. That will allow Columbia to do the renovations and to start September of next year in this wonderful new facility. If we are required to also seek a local Hamilton official plan amendment, that delays us and the September opening is at risk. So there is some pressure, to resolve the different layers of planning. We feel that the Niagara Escarpment Commission is the appropriate venue, and we respectfully request a little bit of flexibility to simply allow those educational and institutional uses that are permitted by the official plan of the Niagara Escarpment. Those are my comments, and I'd be pleased to answer your questions. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Ahrens. On our speakers list, I do have Councillor Pearson, and I'm not sure if Councillor Vanderbeek has any questions, but if she did,
Mr. Chairman, I would certainly respectfully relinquish to Councillor Vanderbeek first as the ward councillor, because I'm sure she's probably going to ask the same questions I was going to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderbeek, did you wish to ask any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Arians, through the chair to you. It is my belief, and I'd like your opinion on this, that once the Niagara Escarpment Plan area of development control is placed on this property, that prevails over all zoning that is in place. What this will do is protect, and I'm asking your opinion on this, would this not just protect the area if the Niagara Escarpment Plan or the area of development control were to be removed from a portion or all of Pleasant View?
So through the chair to the Councillor Vanderbeek, you're absolutely right that development control will replace zoning. I guess the key consideration is, well, if development control is ever lifted, what happens then? And I guess that's the main question. Development control isn't removed just instantly. And with proper notice that development control is about to be lifted, and it's usually at a municipal request that development control is lifted, you do have the opportunity to instate additional zoning controls if you felt they were necessary. I'm just suggesting that at the official plan level, we don't need the detailed list of uses that the Niagara Escarpment Plan already limits these lands to. It's not so much the zoning, because you're right, the zoning doesn't apply. It's almost redundant to introduce these zoning regs. So our main focus is at the official plan level, because that's what we're trying to avoid is duplicate official plan amendments.
And so, sir, through the chair, would you not agree that it's true that once a zoning is, once a use is allowed by the Niagara Escarpment Commission, should the zoning bylaw take effect again, wouldn't it be grandfathered? Wouldn't it be safe?
I think that's more of a legal question, but I think you're generally correct that uses that were established under one regime, if they're not permitted in the new regime, would have to be grandfathered to some extent, yes.
Thank you, sir. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any additional questions from committee? Councillor Pearson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate Councillor Vanderbeek's questions. So, John, I guess I'm just concerned. Did you have conversations with staff and Councillor Vanderbeek before today with regards to this? Because it just seems strange that this is just coming forward without the ward councillor being aware.
So through the chair, I did have discussions with staff. I brought the issue to their attention, and they indicated that they are simply seeking full conformity with the Niagara Escarpment Plan and are simply taking their policies and putting it into your official plan. What I'm suggesting is that we take their policies, put them in your official plan, but with a little bit more flexible wording so that I don't need a subsequent rural Hamilton official plan amendment should I be successful at the Niagara Escarpment level. You're still in conformity with the Niagara Escarpment Plan if you simply permit educational and institutional uses. You're just not as definitive as the Niagara Escarpment Plan is.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So I think the comment was made earlier, Mr. Chairman, if I could just add on to now, as far as Councillor Partridge, that this has been quite an extensive and exhaustive file for the ward councillor. She has done a tremendous amount of work. And I think at this point today, I'd be very, very apprehensive to change anything or revert back on any of the conditions that the good councillor has certainly worked with staff on and staff have brought forward to us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions to Mr. Ahrens, Councillor Partridge? Or did you want to receive and then you have a question for staff?
Yes, thank you. I'll just receive, sorry, I'll receive, and then I have a comment I'd like to make, please.
Okay, so we'll receive the delegation, moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Partridge. Favor, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Partridge. Thank you. That's unanimous. Councillor Partridge?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So a couple of things. I'm a bit concerned with the fact that the delegate has not had conversations, if I understood him correctly, had not had a conversation with Councillor Vanderbeek. You know, this is not a new file. This is something, as I mentioned before, that she has literally committed her, I think, last several years to working on and has done an incredible job. I'm not on for any amendments. The other thing is, too, that, you know, we had passed, I think last year or the year before, that, you know, as a committee, that when outside delegates, planners came to present to this committee, that we would not anticipate, that we would not have any additional amendments that would be put into staff recommendations. And I thought we were very clear on that, that we're not open to adding in amendments. I mean, certainly if the ward councillor wanted that, but in my discussions, and I can't speak for Councillor Vanderbeek, but I'm not hearing that she's on for any amendments at this point. So I'm prepared to move the staff recommendations as they've been presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Good reminder. Councillor Johnson.
My apologies. I didn't realize my video was off this whole
Where
time.
did you go? There
I'm
you are.
right here. I'm really sorry that my video was off. I apologize. I think we can all agree that when policies conflict, then we end up with it jumps up and bites us in the rear end. So I am completely supportive of having our policies mimic policies from the Niagara Escarpment Commission, from the provincial policy statement, federally. I think if we're all in a line, then I believe that's where there's a clear message out there and everybody understands what the rules are. So I am completely supportive of this. I'd be happy to move the recommendations or at least second it to whoever said it first. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So we've got a number of votes to go through to wrap up this file. So I know at the beginning, Councillor Partridge indicated she'd like to move and Councillor Pearson indicated she'd like to second. So I'm going to use those two movers and seconders for the remainder of the votes, if that is okay with committee. So first one, we need to close the public meeting. By Partridge, seconded by Pearson, all in favor. That's unanimous, thank you. And moved by Councillor Partridge, seconded by Councillor Pearson, that the public submissions were received and considered by the committee in approving the application. All in favor or opposed? That's unanimous. And then finally, on the report recommendations, to approve the report recommendations as amended, moved by Councillor Partridge, seconded by Councillor Pearson. And I will go back to committee if there's any further comments or discussion on the report and the recommendations. Not seeing any, thank you. So we'll go to the vote. That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Councillor Vanderbeek. Item 9.2 is a city initiative C1-21B to amend the Urban Hamilton official plan and zoning bylaw for a portion of the lands located at 1086 West 5th Street and revisions to the draft plan of subdivision 25T-200-721 for lands located at 193 Alessio Drive in Hamilton in Ward 8. I am going to request that we do see the staff presentation for this file. It is a little bit more complex than it appears on the surface. Jennifer?
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Roth. I'm a planner with the community planning section. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, and I'm seeing your presentation, but it's in the
There. That looks
back.
better, right?
There we go. That's better. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Good morning, councillors, chair, and members of the public in attendance. I want to start by stating that there will be one change to Appendix F with an additional special condition that was added through discussions with the councillor and with the owner of the subdivision, Eden Park, who is Spalachi Homes. So I'll just skip ahead to this location map. You can see the parcels of land that are subject to the development application. The hatched area is the subdivision, and then the light gray area is the city-owned parcel of land that is subject to the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. So there is an existing draft approval in place for the subdivision, and before you is a revision to add some land, which is identified by block A2 down here in the bottom corner, and then revisions to the road network and the lotting pattern, which is indicated by this block A1 here. So the aerial here gives you an idea of the lands in the surrounding area. You can see phase 1 of the subdivision that's already been constructed on the left-hand side of the screen. And then you can also see the existing park up here being William Connell Park. You can see the pathways in the park, as well. Here's Rimal Road to the south, and then West 5th is just off the screen, but it's just to the east there. This map, we've added some pretty colors to help locate us. As the councillor was stating, it is a little more complex than it initially sounds like. So the applications are before you in a city-initiated official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for this portion of land outlined in red. That's resulting from a plan of subdivision that was an appeal to a plan of subdivision that was triggered by the landowners to the east. Resulting from that application, there was a reconfiguration of the road network that would see a road connection that would cross over into this subdivision, being Eden Park, which is subject to the city-initiated revision. So to facilitate that, we had to agree to, as the previous council agreed to, an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment to implement the settlement decision that was completed back in 2015. And outlined in green just up here again is William Connell Park. The key item of that settlement decision was additional lands being added to the park to create a more appropriate, in our landscape architectural services eyes, a safer entry into the park on the south side, because this area was the original entry in, and it was long and skinny and potentially unsafe to program that space in the same way as what a more squared off area is. There were additional items from the then appeal, which had to do with the construction of these swim ponds, which has subsequently happened. So just to zoom in a bit on what that road reconfiguration looks like, you can see this is from the Sheldon Gate subdivision, the one on the east that triggered this city-initiated application. The land's currently ended with a bit of a cul-de-sac, and then here's that city-owned portion, skinny little 20 by 80 section of land. So what was agreed to back in 2015 was that the road network would be punched through across those lands. So again, just zooming back out, you can see the comprehensive road network that's proposed here going through. Again, it reconfigured this parcel of land in the road network, changed the lotting pattern a bit on this bottom corner, which is why the revision's before you. And again, because of the settlement decision, it is a city-initiated revision. Spalaci had acquired some additional lands in the bottom corner here through a severance from 264 Rimal Road. So we've added that as a privately initiated revision to the subdivision, but we just grouped it together for the comprehensive nature of the subdivisions. So to run through the amendments to the official plan for the city-owned portion, I want to run through the schedules that we're changing. So on this slide, you'll see that Schedule E1, the urban land use designation for the city-owned lands, is being changed from open space to neighborhoods to allow the development of 4 lots and the road connection. The identification of parks and open space on Schedule B is being removed. The stream identification on the property is being removed from Schedule B8. And on Appendix A to the Urban Hamilton official plan, the citywide parks classification is also being removed. There are 2 zoning bylaw amendments that are present in the staff report. The first is to remove the lands from zoning bylaw 05200, and then the second one is to add the lands into zoning bylaw number 6593 to have the same zoning as the Eden Park subdivision to the east. So again, just zooming in on that city-initiated revision, you can see how the road network has changed. And then this is the portion of the privately initiated subdivision. And this was acquired just to add appropriate depth to the lots that will front onto this road segment once it's constructed. So just to run through to give some context of the area, some site photos from a site visit I completed. This is Alessio Drive, the current termination, looking east. You can see portions of the park over here and the trees in the distance. Again, this is looking a little northeast. You can see portions of William Connell Park and then the existing woodlot that's retained. This is looking a bit south from that same Alessio Drive. You can see some of the rooftops and the trees and the backyards of the houses that currently front onto Rimal Road. Now this is looking from the opposite side. So those first pictures were taken from the scab in the homes. And now this is looking west from William Connell Park. Again, looking west. And then this is actually looking south towards Rimal Road from the southern edge of William Connell Park. And this is actually looking at the Sheldon Gate subdivision. And then this is looking back towards Constantine Court, which is one of the first phases that was constructed from Sheldon Gate subdivision. So there's a lot of subdivision work that has happened up here, and it's all interconnected through a servicing and stormwater management area. So it's just trying to help you locate yourselves up here. Okay, and then this was one of the last photos, I believe, and this is the subject lands that proposed to be exchanged and sold, just where those trees are located. Speaking about those trees, an assessment was completed and appropriate compensation is being secured for any trees that had to be taken down to facilitate this application. I wanted to note that consultation has happened starting back in April with a pre-circulation neighborhood meeting sign and a neighborhood meeting at the end of April. There was also internal and external agency commenting period. as well as appropriate notice for the statutory meeting today that was mailed out back in October. There was an expanded circulation area really just to cover both sides of Constantine Courts because the required distance didn't include both sides of the street. So we just wanted to make sure that that was covered. Some of the comments we heard were focused on loss of biodiversity, traffic, noise, and a lot of those have been addressed through special conditions or have been appropriately studied and have been addressed through special conditions in the subdivision. So I would like to state that these applications can be supported. The official plan amendment and zoning bylaw is recommended for approval because it's consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the growth plan. The revisions to the subdivision can be approved because it'll be subject to the owner entering into a standard form subdivision agreement with special conditions. There's a minor amendment that needs to, or an amendment that needs to occur to the Sheldon neighborhood plan to change a utilities identification to single and double identification and revise the road pattern. And I'd also recommend that real estate staff be authorized to dispose of the portion of 1086 West 5th Street and that the proceeds will be added to the Parkland Reserve Fund. And at the appropriate time, I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Planner Roth. I do have some questions, but I'll go to committee first if there's any questions from committee. And if not, I'm going to hand the chair over to Councillor Johnson.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I guess to start off, just the initiative for this was from the city, and the main reason is so that we can connect the road network in a way that makes sense.
Jennifer?
The chair, from a settlement.
Jennifer, you're cutting in and out. Just a minute, please. Jennifer, sorry, you're cutting in and out. If you want to, you can just shut your video off. Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Okay. We'll try like that. Please let me know if it cuts out again. Sorry about that.
Will do.
Thank you. Through the chair, the settlement decision back in 2015 that the previous council approved is what initiated the city into completing this official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, and it is to create improved connectivity through the road network. It allows for an enhanced opening to the park in the south and allows for pedestrian access to it from the Eden Park subdivision that wouldn't have had it previously.
Councillor?
Thank you. And just to be clear, the initial vision for William Connell Park was that the park would connect to Rimal Road, and this is kind of part of the park corridor. But then staff, I guess, worked with the developers in the area and have come to the conclusion that this is a better connection to the park for both pedestrian access and for the the residents in that neighborhood. Is that my understanding right?
Jennifer?
Through the chair, that's my understanding as well. At the time of the settlement in 2015, Landscape Architectural Services staff were happy to see the reconfiguration of the parkland to create a wider park space and access in.
Councillor?
Thank you. You mentioned in your presentation some of the concerns that residents raised, loss of biodiversity, that this was a former farm field, and I believe there's the wetland features or waterways in the area. So can you just elaborate on that?
Jennifer?
Through the chair. So with those wetland features, that's an interesting one. Our natural heritage staff have reviewed this area comprehensively. There have been appropriate studies completed for all the subdivisions upland and upstream and downstream of this area, and all of those areas have been piped. Any of the remaining stream feature, as indicated on the Urban Hamilton official plan, really is just wet features that are over land flow at this point, trying to make their way into the stormwater management ponds in William Connell. So through the development of the area, our natural heritage staff were fine with any further piping in this area to allow for that functional stormwater management. With the loss of biodiversity, that's always a challenging one but Hamilton Conservation Authority and Natural Heritage Planning staff have agreed that this area is within the urban boundary. Appropriate studies have been completed, and there is an existing woodlot that has been studied. And on the previous applications, species at risk assessment was completed to review for any butternut trees, and appropriate mitigation measures have been put in place. And within William Connell Park, there's actually a butternut regeneration area that's being planted. So there's a lot of work that is being done to try and address those concerns ahead of these applications.
Councillor?
Thank you, Jennifer. Just to be clear, so the classification of the wetland or the waterway, it's kind of a damp area that's a low-lying area with overland flow. It's not a stream or an existing wetland. Just to
Jennifer?
be clear.
Through the chair, it's not a channel. It was not identified as a wetland in our Urban Hamilton official plan, and it's one of those areas when you walk through it, it just kind of gets a little squishy.
Okay, thank you. A couple of the other concerns from residents that have raised in the area is concern about traffic congestion, noise, and just kind of the overall concern about increased density in the area, considering it is new subdivisions where people are now living, and this is kind of an infill subdivision, which is in their what would previously been an open space in their backyard. So are you able to address in a little bit more detail just some of those concerns about traffic and congestion and that sort of thing?
Jennifer?
Thank you. Through the chair, I have spoken with several members of the public who have expressed concerns related to traffic and noise from that traffic. And our transportation planning staff have reviewed this area, reviewed all the applications, and as part of a larger vision, proposed upgrades to Rimal Road, which have been completed in this area to accommodate additional traffic. And I believe Brian Hollingworth can speak to that a bit more. As indicated, there is noise associated with traffic. That is always a bit of a challenge. People want to be able to drive, and they want to be able to get to and from their destinations in an appropriate time. And as speed increases, noise volume increases. That's always a balance and a tension that I believe our friends in Public Works and Transportation Planning staff are always working on. But the location of these applications, they are set in from Rimal Road. They will have a local road network that will feed out onto the major arterial road, and all of the volumes have been appropriately reviewed and upgrades have been secured through the subdivision. I don't know if Director Hollingsworth has additional comments.
Yeah,
Mr. Hollingsworth?
Brian Hollingworth, Director of Transportation Planning and Parking. I think Jennifer summarized things quite accurately. There's been work on these lands dating back prior to 2014, so the development is not unexpected. There's an orderly road network. Rimal is an arterial road, and our staff have worked closely to figure out what can be done in terms of turning lanes and extending left turn lanes to make sure things maintain or get better in terms of a traffic perspective.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Director. And again, the purpose of this application is to improve that local road network. Without this connection, we'd end up with cul-de-sacs at both ends and not a very continuous road network. So in many ways, we're trying to improve that traffic circulation in the area through this application. Jennifer, you touched on in your presentation, and I'll speak to it more when we get to the report, but you talked about the amendment and some additional discussions that we've had. Can you elaborate on that just before we get to the owner's agent, just to make sure that committee's aware of these kind of discussions that we've had?
Thank you, Jennifer.
Sure, through the chair. So we started having some discussions last week related to additional sustainability measures that could be added to the subdivision. above and beyond what is typically required under the Ontario Building Code. Urban Solutions representative Matt Johnson spoke on behalf of his clients, since they are the ones that would be impacted, and they were very agreeable to adding in an additional special condition requiring EV ready fit out in the garages of each of these dwellings. So that's really just the conduit and some of those upgrades that were originally in the Ontario Building Code that were subsequently taken out. There were also some additional discussions around density and how to ensure that these lower density areas are meeting a higher density requirement should there and really what we concluded was that there's a lot of progressive work that the City of Hamilton's already done through the second dwelling units, that there can be a second dwelling unit within the building as well as an external dwelling unit if and when applicants or owners of these homes want to construct them. I think that summarizes our conversations fairly well.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'm not keeping track of time, sir, so I'm looking to you for guidance.
I do appreciate that. I'm not keeping track of my own time either, but I know I'm probably over.
Are there anybody else on the speakers list first? Then if you don't mind, and then I'll come back to you.
I'm just going to wrap up, actually. I do have a couple of questions and comments when we get to the report, but those are all the questions I wanted to ask of Jennifer on the presentation.
Given that this is in your ward, sir, and you're actively involved, do you want me to continue chairing until the end of this item's over?
That would be great.
Okay, thank you. So Elsie Kelsey, I'm just going to wing it as we go. So can I please have a motion to receive the staff presentation? It has been moved by Councillor Danko, second by Councillor Ferguson. All those in favor, please.
I'm working on it. Just give me 1 second.
I didn't think I'd be this quick, eh?
Never underestimate a counselor.
Never underestimated Johnson. Okay, it's up, folks. If you can please vote accordingly, and then we're going to go to the applicant.
And that carried 7-0.
Thank you. And may I please ask the applicant, I'm sorry, I heard Mr. Johnston's name, but I'm not sure if he is part and parcel. Oh, there you are, Mr. Johnston. How are you this afternoon? This morning.
This morning. Good, thank you, Councillor. Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Members of the committee, staff and the public. My name is Matt Johnston, a registered professional planner with Urban Solutions. Thanks for receiving my delegation this morning. And thank you specifically to Jennifer Roth, a great planner to work with through this process. As it's been alluded, it was a lot more intricate than it first seemed when we first started these discussions. So I'd also like to thank the abutting developer and also recognize Balachi Homes for their collaborative approach to really facilitate the best solution here. I think everybody worked well with the right objectives in mind. Most recently, we did have a healthy discussion with the ward councillor, Councillor Danko. Thank you for initiating those in terms of what could be done to be a little more sensitive to some of the city's initiatives from a climate lens perspective. And in doing so, happy to welcome the additional condition for the EV units that will now be incorporated in all of the garages of this phase. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? And I'm going to defer first to the ward councillor. Councillor Danko, do you have any questions, please?
I do have one question. Thank you for the presentation, Matt, and the discussions on this that we've been having. My only question is the status of this the adjacent subdivision, 25T-272. My understanding is that once that's signed off, which is going to be done as soon as this is approved, those homes are already sold. This is phase 2, I think, right? Of the Eden Park subdivision. Those homes are sold, and your client is ready to build as soon as they get approval to go ahead.
Thank you, Matt.
Yes, that's correct. The vast majority of the homes are already sold.
Thank you, councillor.
Thank you. No, that's the only question I had. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I don't see anybody in the speakers list or in the chat. So thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. You still spell your name wrong. So folks, can I please have a motion to Councillor Danko, seconded by Councillor Pearson, to receive Matt's presentation, please?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, if you could just repeat the mover and seconder for me, Councillor.
Oh, Councillor Danko, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Thank you, everyone. And before we go further, while we're still voting, it is moved by Councillor Danko, seconded by Councillor Partridge, to receive the correspondence that is attached to the application. So Lisa,
Sorry, I'm
when
still
you're ready.
I'm
No,
sorry,
that's
Councillor.
okay. I'm just letting you know.
Just need Councillor Ferguson to vote on the previous one to receive the agent's delegate. Oh, we got it. Thank you.
Okay,
And that has carried 7-0.
thank you. And now it's moved by Councillor Danko, second by Councillor Pearson, to receive the correspondence attached to this file, 92A. INII. Never know how to say that one, right? And
That carried 0.
thank you. And Ms. Kelsey, I'm still at a loss whether or not we have any speakers to this from the community, because I was really not paying much attention at the beginning for changes to the agenda.
No, we do not have any in-person virtual delegations for this item.
Thank you. So we're going to put it on the floor, folks, and then welcome any questions. Moved by Councillor Danko, second by Councillor Farr, just to put the application 9.2 on the floor.
Sorry, can we just do the vote to close the public meeting?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have a roadmap here. I was winging it, like I said earlier.
I know, you're doing amazing.
It's been a long time since I've done this. Not
So I'll just use.
complaining.
Yep.
So then we're going to move, Councillor Danko, seconded by Councillor Farr, that we close the public meeting, please.
We are going to choose a new.
I know. Thanks for reminding me.
And that carried 7-0. And then the motion or the vote on the public submissions were received and considered by committee in approving the application.
Just to put it on the floor, right? Or are we doing it
We
separately?
usually do this. We usually do this vote, and then the next vote is for discussion. Yep.
So moved by Councillor Danko, second by Councillor Wilson, that the submissions were received while considering this application. I'm winging it again.
Thank you.
Please vote accordingly.
I'm just waiting for your vote, Councillor Johnson. Oh, we got it. Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm too busy learning how to be a chair.
And that carries 7-0.
Thank you. Now we're going to
Okay,
put this on the
yes.
floor. Thank you, Councillor Danko, second by Councillor Partridge, to put 9.2 on the floor. These are lands located at 1086 West 5th Street, Hamilton, and revisions to the draft plan subdivision 25T200721 for lands located at 193 Alessio Drive. Thank you. And this is PED 21207 in Ward 8. It's been moved and seconded accordingly. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Danko.
Thank you, Acting Chair and Committee. So through you to Jennifer or to staff. So just the history on this, the Eden Park subdivision as a whole, the original application and approvals, what were the dates for those?
Are we back to Jennifer again?
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer, I know your video is off, and that's fine. You can keep it off if it's easier for your bandwidth, but go ahead.
Through the chair, we'll try again.
Okay, sure.
So the original application for the Eden Park subdivision came in 2007. I can circle back on the exact date if the councillor would like, but the applications were received in 2007. Subsequent approval for the amendments at that time and the subdivision occurred in 2009, and then the first phase was constructed And then there was a upzoning of phase 3. And phase 2 was kind of left on hold for a little while, waiting for this land swap, sale, and the road network to be punched through. So that was kind of held. And then the upzoning that I referenced for phase 3 was approved in 2019. And that allowed for some additional types of dwelling, being masonette townhouses, as well as the original approvals for some semis and singles.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. And the phase 1 subdivision was primarily single family homes. The phase 3 subdivision that was approved in 2019, as committee will recall, was the Sabrina Boulevard portion of this, and it was a really unique development that, as Jennifer mentioned, has those stacked masonette townhomes, but also all of the parking being underground. Very high density. I think it was around 300 units per hectare, and which would put it even higher than that in people and jobs per hectare. And there was some resistance at the time, including by the previous ward councillor, but we were able to get that approved as a very progressive, high density development for the mountain that doesn't look like a high density development. And I really do appreciate the work of Spalacci and Sons that they did in having the confidence to upzone and in order to provide that really good quality density that we're looking for on the mountain. So when I come back to the phase 2, which is the one that we're talking about in this application, the densities here, I believe, are 23.34 units per hectare, which translates to about 44 persons and jobs per hectare, with a mix of townhomes and single family homes. Do I have those numbers right, Jennifer?
Jennifer?
Through the chair, there's 144 units, and it's a mix of singles and semis, no townhouses in phase 2 is my understanding. The way it's being developed, though, it's lotless blocks, and I'm sure Matt from Urban Solutions can provide a little more information around how that would work. Would there be room for changes? But right now, my understanding is it's all singles and semis, 144 units, which works out to 44 persons per hectare.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. So again, as committee will recall, our current goal for existing greenfield is 60 people and jobs per hectare. So this particular phase of the subdivision is less than our targets. It's also less than what our goals are for the transit plan. However, if we do consider the entire subdivision as a whole, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, noting that phase 3 is significantly higher density, I believe the total density for the whole thing was around 105 people and jobs per hectare. Jennifer, if my math's right, did you want to comment on the accuracy of my math?
Thank you, Jennifer.
Through the chair, I actually would have to get back to you. I was crunching the numbers this morning and also my accuracy. I want to run them by one of the gentlemen that I work with. He does these density calculations, so I can circle back with you on what all 3 phases total would be. But I agree with the sentiment that if you look at it comprehensively, instead of just looking at this individual phase, that we do exceed that minimum target set by the growth plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if I look at the calculations that you had sent me, so units per hectare is 31.33, and then there's a conversion to people per hectare with a multiplication that there's more people living per unit. So we'll just say that it is higher than the 60 people and persons per jobs per hectare that our current target is for the existing greenfields. But I think in the context of discussions over our growth plans and how we're going to expand as a city, building an entire subdivision of single family homes and duplexes is probably problematic moving forward. But considering that this entire subdivision was previously approved and has been sold, the majority of the units have been sold, there's really at this point nothing we can do about it except for try to make this as the best that it can be. So the application that we have before us Rearranging the road network is part of that to make sure that there is a pedestrian access to the park as good as it can be. And also some of those discussions that we've had this week. So committee is aware. Some of the things that we raised with the agent and the owner was a request for EV rough-ins, which was previously part of the building code, to be included with new units for electric vehicles. We talked about the similarly rough-ins for rooftop solar. However, my understanding is that a lot of the houses don't have roof line or orientation that would be conducive to rooftop solar, so that's probably not possible, but something to consider for future developments. And then we also talked about making sure that when we're talking about 60% infill density, that when we're building new homes, that they are ready for secondary suites. And that's things like having provisions for easily adding a second entrance, for having the ability to have fire separations, fire egress with basement windows that are sufficiently sized, and HVAC and plumbing rough-ins for secondary suites. Now, obviously, that would add quite a bit of change to floor plans and housing plans that have already been approved. But I think it just points to that kind of bigger picture of consideration of when we do have these secondary plans and subdivisions already pre-approved, what additional measures can we put in now that can help with our future growth plans and also our climate initiatives as a city. And as mentioned, the builder here has very graciously agreed to add those EV rough-ins to the new units that will be built, and we do appreciate that. So my final question, Madam Chair, thank you for the time, is through you to Jennifer, how that condition for the electric vehicle rough-ins is captured in the direction that we're going to pass here today.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Through the chair, an amended schedule or Appendix F was given to the clerk and should be, I believe, is before you now. And that has been added as condition 60. So they would be required to show how the rough-ins are accommodated within the building permits prior to them being able to secure a building permit for any of the dwellings.
So I was through the chair, it's Lisa Kelsey here, that I have prepared a vote. So it would be Appendix F is being amended, adding condition number 60, that prior to issuance of building permits, the owner shall provide building permit drawings for all dwellings within Eden Park that demonstrates that the future installation of electric vehicle charging stations can be accommodated in garages. And we can vote on that now.
Okay, thank you. Just, yeah, and I think that might be a good idea just to get that out of the way. Councillor Danko, would you like to move that?
I'm happy to move that. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Partridge. Please vote accordingly. Thank you. So Councillor Danko, while we're waiting for the vote to come in, are there any other questions or comments before we go to the actual vote as amended?
And that carried 7-0.
You.
And just
Councillor Danko.
One final comment for me. Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, just really appreciate the working with the builder's agent and the builder to do what we can to, maybe improve the environmental considerations of our planning decisions. I'm really impressed by that Eden Park Phase 3 development that Spalachi has come forward with, and hoping that we see a lot more of that in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So folks, it's before you. I think we've already moved it. Elsie Kelsey, I'm just double checking.
Yes, it was Danko and Partridge, and
thank you. And it's been moved as amended. Please vote accordingly. So that takes care of me being chair for. Thank you, Councillor Danko. The chair is back to you.
And that
Go ahead,
7-0.
Kelsey. Thank you. It was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it. Okay, we are on 9.3, which is our delegations respecting encampment enforcements. So we have one delegate with us today, I believe, James Lambert. Mr. Lambert in the meeting. I'm not seeing him in the participants list. So I'm just gonna call again, Mr. James Lambert, if you're able to connect, if you're seeing this on the live stream. Give you 1 moment. I'm gonna scroll through the participants list again for a third and final time. Mr. James Lambert, able to connect. Still not seeing him in the participants list. So, Madam Clerk, Mr. Lambert's not present, and the second delegate, Ms. Easton, withdrew.
So there's no action for us to take. We can continue on the off chance that James Lambert appears later. We can deal with it then, or just move on to 9.4 and John Ross.
So there's no actions to take on 9.3, and we'll just move on to 9.4.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Item 9.4 is Mr. John Ross respecting public consultation strategy and planning protocols. Mr. Ross, if you're able to activate your camera and your microphone, I see you there.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
So when you're ready, you have the floor and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I am a resident of Ward 1, and I also reside within 120 meters of a proposed development, but the date for the hearing of the application has not yet been determined. I very much appreciate the committee receiving this delegation, as I wanted the opportunity to present the materials on page 50 to 64 of the agenda. The reason for my delegation today relates to two basic concerns that I have. The first one is the role of the neighborhood association in the pre-consultation strategy with the applicant and how it is relied upon by the applicant. And the second one relates to letters of support and how they are often redacted and not released in a timely manner so that they can be reviewed by other residents in the area. These letters of support are referenced by the planning consultant of the applicant, and I am bringing that to your attention because I believe that in the future, with intensification and redevelopment in established older neighborhoods, there will be many more developments in which the neighborhood association will be involved, and I believe that the protocol of how they are involved should be of concern to the members of the planning committee. The issue that I had with the neighborhood associations arose when a private meeting was held in November 2019. And when I found out about it in February 2020, I tried to address it, and I even wrote a letter to the planning committee. And this was before it had even been assigned a file number or the application has been filed. I've been unsuccessful in finding out details about this meeting. And what I did find about the meeting was actually not reassuring at all. There were other members that were not of the neighborhood association there. I don't know what was presented. Often when you see a site plan, you have the little box that says all the variances that are being requested. I don't know what was said by the applicant, how it was presented, or whether the people who were there, who were called for the private meeting had the authorization of the neighborhood association to give their approval. Unfortunately, the applicant in their planning strategy relied quite heavily on this early meeting and even attributed the increase in height by 2 stories to the members of the neighborhood association. I tried finding out who and what was said. I didn't get any answers. One of the neighborhood associations, in fact, was against the increase in 2 stories. The way I think this could be addressed, as I set out in my material, is to amend the formal consultation agreement that the planning staff enters into with an applicant and stop the applicant from using a preliminary meeting as the authorization and approval of the development. I think that's unfair, and I believe that it could be remedied if the formal consultation document was amended by the planning staff to prevent that from occurring. The second example or issue I had is with the letters of support. In August of 2020, 15 months ago, I wanted to see the letters of support because there was a community meeting. But, and although I was promised that in writing by the planning staff person, I never did see what those letters of support were, and they had to go through a redaction process. I understand that there were a lot of problems with COVID and just the planning staff being overwhelmed with other issues and projects and developments. So I don't treat that as a blame against the planning staff, but it would help if we did see it, because it's my opinion there are many conflicts of interest sometimes arising with letters and support. They are often couched in language that say they preserve the character of the community, improve the living quality, words that fall under the provincial policy statement, but they're written by groups or individuals that have a financial interest in the property, that may be getting a share in the profits of the development, or who were guarantors for large sums of money of the applicant's mortgage on title. Also, some of the letters of support may be written by people who are signing officers of the applicant, owner of the property, or they may be, in fact, owners or interested parties in adjoining properties or properties within 120 meters that will benefit by having a precedent for high-rise development. So I think it's important to address letters of support, petitions, so that they're not redacted, because I don't believe there should be an expectation of privacy if you're signing a petition, or if you're saying, I am the most impacted resident in the development. I would have thought that's in proximity, and I thought we had 100% 7 homeowners that were closest in proximity opposed to the project, but there's letters in support saying, no, we are the closest. With redaction, I can't even tell where these people live or why they should be given priority.
Mr. Ross,
yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're well over your 5 minutes. If you're able to give a final.
Yes. So my conclusion on that is also in the formal application document entered into with the applicant, there'll be a self-vetting process where the applicant and the planning consultant review the letters of support to make sure there's no conflicts of interest, so that they don't get included and referenced to later on as evidence of community support. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity of allowing this delegation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Are there any questions from committee? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you and good morning. Good morning, John. It's nice to see you and I hope you're well.
Thank you.
So I just want to make sure I just like to summarize what your ask is, if I could, that you're asking this committee and by extension council to enact a protocol for how public submissions are dealt with in the future to ensure that any applicant is not, I think you phrased it, not misrepresenting a community's position. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, and specifically a private meeting that is very, very preliminary with the neighborhood association.
Okay, so John, I'll have some questions for staff just to set out what are the obligations of municipal governments in terms of their public consultation and who is subject to conflicts of interest. So I hope you'll find those answers informative and instructive. I know I will.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you. So we're going to receive Mr. Ross's delegation, and then I'll open up the floor to questions to staff. So all in mover and seconder to receive the delegation, moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All in favor? Councillor Johnson, are you still with us? Be able to vote? If not, yep. Thank you. That's unanimous. And then questions to staff in relation to the delegation. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Danko. I'm not sure who is here from staff that could help me in setting out the requirements that a municipality has or an applicant has with respect to public consultation when shuttling through a development application. I think it's under the Planning Act, but I'm not sure. I'd like clarification on where is the requirement held and what are the parameters of that requirement for the applicant. Thank you.
General Manager.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, I can provide sort of a high-level overview of how the process normally unfolds. There is a statutory component to it, which of course ends with the public meeting for a committee to make a decision, and any member of the public has the right to come and make a presentation and delegation at Planning Committee to represent their views directly. We do have in place a practice wherein we encourage applicants to do their own consultation as a best practice even before making application. Mm-hmm. We deem that as a best practice because it gains some of the community input before decisions or plans are kind of cemented in the eyes of an applicant. We've had good experience where applicants going out early get some good early feedback that actually informs the application before it comes in, because once the application comes in, we as staff are under the clock to get a report in front of Planning Committee. So we do like to encourage applicants to do that early consultation. We do also have, as part of our requirements around what constitutes a complete application, we have the Planning Act allows us to set out what comprises a complete application. We do have within that a requirement that an applicant identify what their consultation strategy will be post-application. And in cases where they have provided pre-application consultation, we ask for them to share the materials from that with us. And then we have also provided some guidelines to applicants in terms of some of the processes, techniques they can consider in doing their own consultation process. Again, all of this in advance of an actual statutory meeting in front of Planning Committee, which is the true kind of statutory moment when the public can have their opportunity to delegate. And those guidelines include a wide range of things from meetings with neighborhood associations, hosting their own PICs, doing some applicants do websites, project websites where they share their plans and they create opportunity for the public to provide comments. There's lots of different ways that that applicants can pre-engage prior to making an application.
Thank you through the chair to GM Thorne. If I could just repeat that back, that the legislation directing municipalities on public consultation is the Planning Act. Yes. And
yes.
thank you. It is not explicit in its requirements in how they undertake consultation, how consultation is to be done in a specific matter. But this municipality has followed the practice of best practices and sets out guidelines for an applicant. Did I just hear that correctly?
Through the chair, yes, I would say the Planning Act has some specifics with regards to how the actual statutory meeting is held at Planning Committee, so notice requirements and so on. But in terms of that pre-application consultation, what the municipality can require is a consultation plan and strategy, which we do require, and then we provide some guidelines as to what that can look like. But that kind of pre-application really is about best practice as opposed to statutory requirement.
Thank you. Excuse me. On the matter of any protocol that would set out that Mr. Ross is suggesting, how would the municipality accommodate any such thing? Would it require an amendment of such?
So through the chair, if I understood the delegate correctly, there is, when applicants are meeting directly with neighborhood associations, with groups of neighbors, that's not often something that the city, the city doesn't define that process and define how those meetings unfold. We have a lot of applicants who go to regular meetings of neighborhood associations to present their plans. In some cases, staff might be present, but often not. And that really is an interaction between the applicants and the neighborhood associations, or if it's not a formal neighborhood association, it could just be a group of neighbors in the area. That really does become, I would say it's a best practice, but that does become sort of an interaction prior to an application between the applicant and that group of neighbors. We don't prescribe that process. The process that we describe is for any city consultations, which would include statutory meetings such as we have here at Planning Committee. I know that a number of councillors as well do have their own practices in place where they will hold community meetings, town hall meetings, that sort of thing.
Thank you. And so thank you for that. In your view then, from what we require, and is it the city's place to regulate what goes on in a private meeting between an applicant and those who show up in this pre-statutory exchange requirement?
So through the chair, I would suggest it's not, nor do I think we could regulate how those meetings unfold. I will say that if there's ever concerns about, what is ultimately presented by the applicant as to what they think the views of the community are, that is of course tested through the rest of the public process. So if there are concerns about, from a neighborhood association, for example, about how their position on an application has been represented, they can at any time just communicate directly to city staff. And we do encourage that as well. And of course, they can also communicate directly to council at a planning committee meeting, so that their comments or views are not filtered through an applicant or through some other third party. I would say the same applies to any individual members of the public. They can also comment directly to city staff. They can come and delegate directly to planning committee. They don't have to sort of rely upon their local neighborhood association or anything like that to filter or summarize their comments. It's open to anybody.
Thank you. Thank you through the chair. I really appreciate that point, because we do welcome any delegation at the eventual public meeting on the application. And it's my understanding that the conflict of interest per se applies to public office holders, such as the chair and myself and other members of the committee, and not the applicant. So thank you for those points of clarification on the parameters, Mr. Thorne. I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. There's no further discussion on this item. I don't think that there is. We're just going to move on to item 10.1. Thank you. So 10.1 is Bill 13, proposed Supporting People and Business Act 2021. A mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations in the report. Moved by Councillor Councillor Pearson. Everybody's jumping around. And seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on Bill 13? Seeing any? Straight to the vote on that. There was like a earthquake there and everybody's squares just reordered themselves. Thank you. That's 10.2, the residential care facility inspection log report. Mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations in the report. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Farr. Got you again. Is there any discussion on this report? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I support the recommendations, but just given the conditions that have been highlighted by COVID, I was wondering if there's someone in from staff in attendance who could just set out publicly for the public record what this recommendation is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, Monica Cirillo, Director of Licensing and Bylaw Services. Councillor, to answer your question, this is really a continuous improvement initiative, and we as municipal law enforcement officers go into residential care facilities on an annual, biannual, or a complaint basis. And what this will do is we'll offer transparency to both residents or family members of those that are in RCFs to see if the home that the individuals are in compliance with the bylaw, the RCF bylaw.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So I understand it is the requirements are that activity is to be logged and set out publicly for display. Just so I understand, if there is an infraction that is noted, is that noted on the posted on the poster, along with an ability for folks to track whether it's been resolved and when? Thank you. Through you, Chair. That's my question.
Through the chair, yes, the inspection log will be posted in a conspicuous location within the home, so residents would be able to see if the home is in compliance or in non-compliance with the bylaw. The specifics as to what is needed to be done to get into compliance would not be included in the inspection log, but it would demonstrate whether compliance was there or not, as well as when compliance has been achieved.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? I'm not seeing any from committee, so that was moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Farr. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Our general information, there's one item being removed from the outstanding business list. I need a mover and a seconder to approve the changes. Moved by Councillor Partridge, gotcha, and seconded by Councillor Johnson. Councillor Farr, are you able to vote? Thank you. On to item 13. Which is the appointment of chairs and vice chairs for 2022. Is there a nomination for chair? Councillor Pearson?
I nominate Councillor Brenda Johnson.
You've been voluntold, Councillor.
Yep. Second by Councillor Partridge.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, do you accept the nomination?
Yeah, like I have a choice. Okay. I got it.
I was going to ask to put your hand up if you haven't been chair already. So
I'd be happy, Mr. Chair, if somebody else wants to do this, hasn't been chair this term, I'd be more than happy to be vice chair again.
I'm not seeing anybody jumping out of their seats. Thank you. Councillor Partridge, do you have anything to add?
I was just wondering on process, are we also putting names forward for vice chair? Because I would nominate Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, we are going to make selections for vice chair and first vice chair and second vice chair as well. So We'll do.
I had actually said, do you want to do it as separate votes? I had.
We do them all at once?
Yes.
Okay. I even have a space here where I can write in the names. Okay, so I've got Councillor Johnson for chair, and I hear a nomination for Councillor Ferguson as first vice chair. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Pearson? Councillor Ferguson, accept the nomination?
Yeah, since AF&A is finished in this next month, I'd be happy to take it.
Thank you. And then we also need a nomination for the second vice chair. So if anybody hasn't served as a vice chair, we want to make a nomination. So Councillor Partridge.
Well, I would nominate Councillor Wilson if no one else, if I can get a seconder, please.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Pearson. Thank you. So our nominees then are for chair, Councillor Johnson, for first vice chair, Councillor Ferguson, and for second vice chair, Councillor Wilson, for the 2022 Super Happy Fun Time planning season. Okay, did you get all the movers and seconders for that, or do you? It's just one vote on the whole thing. So you should have the vote there before you. As carried unanimously. Thank you. How many more meetings do I got before I'm off the hook? One? Yes.
And just to confirm, that starts as of the January meeting in 2022. So Councillor Danko, you have just one more happy, joyful meeting.
Thank you. Item 13.3 is the general manager's update. General Manager Thorne, are there any updates for committee?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I would just like to update Planning Committee with respect to the return of some city staff coming back into the workplace. I did provide an announcement about 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, to advise that a number of staff who work in the department in areas related to development approvals are starting a graduated return to the workplace. So this affects about 125 staff in planning and economic development, spread across a few different divisions, primarily the planning division, growth management division, and building division. But it also affects some other staff as well. These are staff who are typically involved in development applications, development approvals. So starting next week, myself and a number of the directors will be starting to return to the workplace. We have a second phase of staff returning the week of the December 6th for those staff who voluntarily want to come back early prior to the holidays and start integrating back into the workplace. And then starting the week of January 10th, the rest of those staff working in those areas will be starting to return to the workplace. And when I say return to the workplace, in some cases that may be full-time, in some cases that may be through a hybrid model with some remote working, teleworking still in place. But we are starting to roll that out. As the city manager noted last week, this is just a little bit ahead of a more broad return to the workplace of staff across the corporation. But I wanted to share that information with Planning Committee. And just to be clear, this is only about staff returning to the workplace. We aren't yet opening facilities up to the public. So meetings will continue to happen virtually. For any applicants coming into City Hall, we will still just have that first floor counter open, which is just for picking up and dropping off materials. We don't have those upper floors open yet for consultations for building permits, zoning review, and so on. That'll be part of a broader discussion that is happening right now through SLT and the EOC in terms of opening up facilities more broadly to the public. So for now, this is just about staff coming back into the workplace. We are also going to be starting up at the beginning of December, restarting up our full development review team meetings. So these are the meetings that are held every Wednesday between applicants and staff around new applications that have come in. They'll still be happening virtually, but they'll be happening with sort of the same general approach and agendas and participation that was happening pre-COVID. So that is going to start rolling out at the beginning of December. So I do just want, if I can, just take a moment to acknowledge the work that staff has done over the past 2 years, working in many cases entirely remotely. We've had some staff who never left the workplace, who've been working in the workplace the entire time, many who've been in the field. If you think about some of our building inspectors and construction inspectors, and then a number of staff who've been working remotely, not only just the challenge of having to work in that manner, but doing so in probably one of our busiest years we've ever had over the past year in terms of development activity. It's been a pretty extraordinary effort. And it will be lots of challenges and complications in terms of now trying to integrate staff back into the workplace, which is why we're doing it over a several week period. But I did want to share that information with Planning Committee as well. And I believe tomorrow at GIC, I'll be giving a more broad update about sort of corporate-wide the return to the workplace. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, General Manager Thorne. And, just speaking as a paper and, highlighter and pen guy, it's no small task to go everything online, and especially when you're looking at planning drawings and used to, spreading those out over the whole table. So really appreciate all the effort of our staff, and thank you for the update. Is there any questions for General Manager Thorne from committee? Not seeing any. So I need a mover and a seconder to receive the General Manager's update. Moved by Councillor Pearson, second by Councillor Ferguson. Favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. We're now going to move into closed session for item 14.1. So I need a mover and a seconder to move into closed session respecting items 14.1 and 14.2 pursuant to section 9.1 subsections E, F, and K of the city's procedural bylaw 21-021 and section 2392 subsections E, F, and K of the Ontario Municipal Act 2001, as amended, as the subject matter pertains to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the city, the receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and to a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. I saw Councillor Farr, you moved that, seconded by Councillor Johnson. All in favor? Everybody? Thank you. That's unanimous. So members of the public, the meeting will continue following the closed session portion of the meeting when you see the members of committee rejoin the meeting. The committee will wait up to 5 minutes upon reconvening an open session before proceeding with the meeting to provide members of the public and media time to return. So we are going to move into closed session. Councillor Pearson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I will recuse myself on the first item as I'm declared a conflict. But could I respectfully ask if Elsie Kelsey can please send me an email or whatever to let me know when they go into the second item, so that I can join in at that point and allow me in at that point?
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we're going to be done in time for me to get my waffle sandwich at Relay. Been looking forward to it since 2 weeks ago.
Where do you get that? A waffle sandwich?
Relay on King William.
I love Relay.
Waffle breakfast sandwich. I'm telling you, man.
Best coffee.
You know, Ward 8 has a Denninger's with some really nice sandwiches.
Denninger's has the best breakfast sandwiches in the city. They're amazing. On those like egg buns, they're so good. Oh, we're live.
And there was a plug.
So we are on item 14.1. This is instructions to appeal the Ontario Land Tribunal for lack of decision on zoning bylaw amendments, ZAC 14003, for lands located at 195 Wellington Street South, Hamilton, in Ward 2. So moved by Councillor Farr, seconded by Councillor Wilson, I think. That the closed section recommendations A, B, and C and D to report LS 21038 PED 18054A and appendices A, B, C as amended and D hereto be approved and remain confidential until made public as the city's position before the Ontario Land Tribunal. And B, that report LS 21038 PED 18054A regarding the appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal PL 171389 from the non-decision of the application to amend zoning bylaw 6593 for the lands located at 195 Wellington Street South, including appendices A, B, C as amended, and D thereto remain confidential. All in favor or opposed? Oh, Councillor. Councillor Farr, did you have something to add?
No, I was doing the hand vote when I didn't need to there. Sorry about that. You had mentioned C as amended, so I'm quite pleased to move this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The vote didn't come up for me. See, Kelsey.
Something's up here.
So we'll just gonna take a manual vote on this. All in favor? See everybody. Any opposed?
Abstain, Mr. Chairman, please.
Thank you, Councillor. So that vote is unanimous with the abstention of Councillor Pearson. Thank you. On 14.2, Ontario Land Tribunal appeals of the commercial and mixed-use zones UHOPA 69 and zoning bylaw number 17-240 and transit-oriented development zones zoning bylaw 16-265 LS 18008C /PED 18050B citywide. And I need a mover and a seconder to approve the following. A, that closed session recommendations A, B, C, D, E, and F to report LS 18008C, PED 18050B, and appendices A and B hereto be approved and remain confidential until made public as the city's position before the Ontario Land Tribunal. And B, that the balance of report LS 18008C, PED 18050B, regarding the appeals to the Ontario Land Tribunal of the passing of City of Hamilton bylaws numbers 17-240 commercial and mixed-use zones and 16-265 transit-oriented corridor zones to amending zoning bylaw number 05200, including Appendix C, thereto remain confidential. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Partridge, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All in favor or opposed? Are we able to get that? Not coming up for me.
Councillor Johnson, just need you to call for the adjournment as Councillor Danko is having technical difficulties. How much do you pay me? Okay. So it's moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Partridge. All those in favor? And I'm assuming Councillor Danko would also be voting yes. Thank you, Councillor Forrest. Thumbs up.
There we go.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The meeting is officially over. That carries 0. Thank you, everybody. Bye, Elsie Kelsey. Thanks for your help.